if people don't have some production and some financial records, they are at a real disadvantage in the industry of trying to be in that top third of profitability on cow calf. You've got to have some records, and then you have to have either someone else analyze them or yourself. And really, someone else is best to analyze them because they're going to see things you don't see.
Welcome to the Beef Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brandy Buzzard, and it's my pleasure to bring you the trending issues and topics with the best and brightest minds in the beef industry. Today, we are joined by Dr. Mark Hilton, owner of Midwest Beef Cattle Consultants in West Lafayette, Indiana. Dr. Hilton earned his bachelor's in animal science from Purdue University and also his DVM from Purdue University. His career has included academia, industry, and business ownership, and we are excited to speak with him today about his long and diverse career. Welcome to the Beef Podcast, Dr. Hilton.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Brandy.
We're very happy to have you on the show today. To start off with, can you just tell us more about how you got involved in the beef industry and your career path so far? I touched on some very, very few high points there, and I know it's a lot more to that, more to below the surface than what I just read. So if you want to go ahead and just bring us up to speed, that would be great.
Sure. That'd be great. Thanks, Brandy. So I was born on a swine farm. My parents had a swine business. My dad actually had an off-farm job. And then when I was 10 years old, they bought another farm, and it had what my dad called rough ground on it. So he said, we need to buy some beef cows. And I was 10 years old, and I said, so do we know anything about raising beef cows? And he said, no, but we'll learn. And my dad and I have some very similar qualities, but there's one that's totally opposite. I would have done my studying for a year or two and then pulled the trigger, but we learned as we went. And we had a really good veterinarian. And a lot of times, because my dad worked off the farm, I dealt with the veterinarian about the cattle. And I really loved working with the cattle. It was just super to me. And it was a place where I could kind of prove to my dad that, I knew what I was doing, and I tried to read a lot and do a good job. One day I was there, had a sick calf, and I'm talking to the veterinarian about him. I think I was a junior in high school. And he said, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, I'm not sure yet. He says, you do pretty good in school, don't you? And I said, yeah. He said, you'd make a good veterinarian. He said, you should ride with me and see what I do. And I thought, oh, it sounds cool. So I did that. And I realized this is what I wanted to do. He did a diverse mixed practice. Mm-hmm. And the farm animal part of it, the swine and the beef people were my people. And I really thought this is my career path. So I went to Purdue, studied animal science, and so thankful that I got a degree in animal science before vet school, because literally 80% of what I do on consulting is animal science, nutrition, genetics, environment, etc. Well-managed beef, cow-calf operation, disease should be rare, mm-hmm. right? It should be very unusual. So, my whole goal was preventative medicine. I did my senior seminar when I was in veterinary college on developing a beef cow-calf herd health program. My favorite professor came up to me after the seminar and said, great talk, Mark, it'll never work.
Oh.
I looked at him and I said, what? And he goes, cow-calf guys are not progressive. He says, if you want somebody to pay you for consulting, he said, do dairy, do swine, or do feedlot. And I said, people are already doing that. I want to do cow-calf. This is 1983, so 41 years ago. So joined a practice, mixed animal practice, 80% farm animal in Iowa. A wonderful boss and partner in that practice. And we had phenomenal clients that wanted to be great. And 5 years after I started practice, because the farm crisis hit right as I graduated. So that was a bummer.
Well, that's a great stroke of luck.
Yeah. So 5 years into my veterinary career, I launched the Total Beef Herd Health Program, and I got 10 herds to sign up for it, where I was going to do consulting with them on nutrition and genetics and health and environmental control, pasture management, etc. And they were going to pay me for that. And records was really the hub of the wheel. That was really important. So I called Dr. Boehm at Purdue, and I told him, I said, just wanted you to know I have 10 herds on my beef herd health program that you said wouldn't work.
Awesome.
He said, I knew you'd make it happen. And I said, what? I said, that's not what you said at the end of the seminar. He goes, I just wanted to challenge you. So I don't know if he really was trying to challenge me or he really thought I would fail. But, gosh, I've been lucky enough to do that for, like I said, 35 of my 41 years. It took 5 years, or 36, I guess, to do a lot of, consulting with the owners. And, I mentioned nutrition. I don't have a PhD in nutrition, but most of my farmers were not even using a nutritionist. And at least I could get them. I use the baseball analogy. They were in the batter's box, and I thought I can get them to second base with my Bachelor of Science Animal Science degree.
Mm-hmm.
If they've got questions that are so complicated that I need to get them home, I call a nutritionist. I call PhD nutritionists and have them help me. But I like to look at the big picture of the entire system that is that beef, cow, calf business. And it's such a complex system. I love to look at that whole system
Mm-hmm.
and see how everything fits together. And if they're doing something really good, I store that in my brain. And I think, oh my gosh, I had a herd a week ago or 2 weeks ago that were having the same problem. I'm going to propose this solution to them. But where they were having difficulties, a lot of times I wouldn't have the answer right then, but I'd say, let me do some research and I'm going to get back to you. So I try to ask my producers what their goals are and propose some possible solutions, ask them if that's possible. And then we work together to make those things happen. I just feel so strongly that beef, cow, calf producers work too hard and don't make enough profit, that I want to be that asset to them that helps them work less hard and make more money. So that's in a nutshell. After our practice, I forgot. Then I got asked to go to Purdue and be a professor, and never thought I was not on my radar when I was in vet school. I wanted to get out and, work on cattle and, be a private practitioner. But we had lots of extern students in our practice. We had a very progressive practice, and the teaching bug kind of bit me. And so I went back to Purdue. And for 18 years, I took students on farm calls every day, taught beef production medicine. I taught the business class, communications class for the vet students, and loved that. It was, they're the best students on campus. They're highly motivated. They want to do what I'm teaching them. If we had to go out at 2 a.m. to deliver a calf, they were thrilled to go, right? Because they were learning something. And then after 18 years, Elanco called me and said, how would you like to come and work for us? And I didn't think I would leave, but it was the right time to make a change in my career. And it was wonderful. It's a great company with great leadership, and worked for them for 7 years. And then I, quote, retired last May. My wife says my retirement looks the same as we're driving our car and we cross the state line from Indiana into Illinois. And she says, oh, it looks so different. So I've got my own genetics business. We sell bulls. And like I said, I'm still doing consulting. I write some articles for some different farm magazines. So it's hard to go from 100 to 0. So I'm learning to pick and choose where I do my consulting.
Somehow I feel that you're not going to be at 0 really ever.
Yeah, maybe the day before I'm gone, right? So yeah, it's still fun, right?
Yeah.
I love helping people. It's just so rewarding to have a producer call me, see me, whatever, and say, wow, that plan that you put in to stop calf scours, it's awesome. We haven't had calf scours for 3 years, right? I mean,
yeah, that's great.
That's so much more rewarding than, sending somebody a bill and getting $100 or whatever, right? It's wonderful.
A healthy digestive tract is a prerequisite for overall calf health and performance. It affects the absorption and utilization of nutrients and influences the calf's immune system. Digesterom Calf from DSM Firmenich is a phytogenic product that can help benefit gut bacteria to improve gut functionality, immunity, and performance. Take care of your calves with Digesterom Calf. Visit dsm.com/digesterom to learn more.
Well, you were talking about how when your dad said he wanted to get cattle and you would have researched it, and then gone, but you guys just jumped in with both feet and built a business from there. I think they call that building your ship at sea.
Yeah, because the herd we bought was calving year round, and our vet helped us get it, into 2 calving seasons. We had a spring season and a fall season, and things like that our vet did besides fixing broken cows, right? I understood that a veterinarian was more than fixing broken animals, and he was a consultant to us, right? He gave us advice that helped our business. And, that's kind of one of the reasons I got into this business, because he was able to make some pretty simple suggestions that really made an impact on our beef business.
Well, it's clear that it made an impact. I mean, you're very, as I'm sitting here talking to you, our listeners who aren't watching this video, but like Dr. Hilton is very impassioned, and it's evident by, I mean, how much you love serving people, for lack of a better word, serving people and helping them with their herd. So that's great. We need people like that
Thank you.
that are willing to do those things. So I appreciate it. From someone who generally has to call someone else to get help with a question, I appreciate having people like you around. When I was preparing for this episode, for this conversation, this was in your bio and your skills list. And it was something that I don't think we've talked a lot about on the podcast, but I really want to delve into this. And it said like a specialty of yours is production records analysis.
Yes.
And it seems like maybe that ties back into that systems-based beef production you were talking about. Do you want to expound upon that at all?
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm a numbers guy. I love spreadsheets. Numbers don't lie. When I launched my total beef herd health program, like I said, I had 10 herds on this program, and I love to have things very orderly and very systematic. My wife says I play in my spontaneity. So I like everything set and in its place. And so there were 6 categories to our total beef herd health program: records, genetics, environment, health, fertility, and marketing. No, marketing wasn't on it first. Anyway, so I polled them after the first year. I gave them a questionnaire, all 10 people on the program. And I said, which of the 6 areas was the most impactful for you? 9 out of 10 said records.
Oh,
I was not surprised that it was the most chosen, but 9 out of 10.
that's a lot.
And one of the producers, we bought a fair amount of semen and bulls from Nichols Farms out in Iowa, because I was in Eastern Iowa, and great reputation with cattle. And Dave Nichols had one of his folks come out and interview me for one of their newsletters, and we went to Paul Keitels, one of my really good clients. And it was totally about the records program that I was doing. And I was doing consulting all across Iowa. I had probably at the time 15, 20 herds on my program. And I still remember this quote from Paul. He said, "I could not raise cattle anymore without these records."
Yeah.
It made that big of an impact on his herd, because again, we get in our mind that certain cows are good cows and certain cows are not, but the records tell who is doing well and who's not.
Yeah.
And it shows calving interval and what's the preg rate on the nursing 2-year-olds. I mean, you can really delve into a lot of problems, and instead of speculating on what the issue is, the numbers tell the truth. And I'll give an example. I had a herd, well-managed herd. Oh my gosh, probably one of the best herds in all of Iowa. I still work with them. And the owner had a 65-day breeding season for his cows and for his heifers. And I showed him on the numbers that if his heifers calved in that third 21-day period, so calved from day 42 to 65 of the calving season, they had a 50% open rate in those heifers. And I said, you need to cut your breeding season on heifers down to 42 days. And lots of reasons why he couldn't. And after, I don't know whether it was 2 years or 3 years of pretty much the exact same thing, he said, "You're right. We've got to cut this down." He says, "My goal is not to have the maximum number of pregnant heifers. It's to have heifers that are going to be in the herd 5 and 6 years from now."
Yes.
So we cut it down to 42 days. They breed heifers for 30 days now.
Wow.
And he said, if they can't get bred because they sink everybody and breed them once AI, so 21 days later, anybody that didn't get stuck is coming into heat. And he says, if a heifer can't get bred in 2 cycles, I don't want her. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're the same guy that X number of years ago was kind of, giving me heck and challenging me on that. But my numbers and the records, and he's a numbers guy too. He looked at him and he's like, you can't argue with these.
Yeah, they don't lie.
So yeah, I'm just, wow, if people don't have some production and some financial records, they are at a real disadvantage in the industry of trying to be in that top third of profitability on cow-calf. You've got to have some records, and then you have to have either someone else analyze them or yourself. And really, someone else is best to analyze them because they're going to see things you don't see.
Yeah. You can get barn blind, and you can probably get book blind too.
Absolutely correct. And so I am really big on having, and I'm not panning for business here. I'm not, it might be your extension educator, it might be your herd health veterinarian, it might be your nutritionist, who knows? The guy that sells you bulls, the woman that sells you your bulls, whatever. Somebody needs to look at your records and analyze them and see what you're doing well and see what you don't do well. The herds that were on my production medicine program when I was in Iowa, we would have a meeting in January every year, and we called it the year-end meeting, even though it was January. We were summarizing the previous year's information, and everybody got a sheet of paper, and it had about 20 different factors that we were measuring. And in the first column was their data, okay?
Mm-hmm.
In the next column was the range of the worst to the best.
Right.
And then in the last column was where what was their percentile rank in all of those. And it was very interesting to me. Competition is a good thing. And
Yeah.
nobody likes to be in last place. And I recall a herd right off the bat that was just having too much calf death loss from birth to weaning. And these are high-end herds, right? These are some of the best herds in Iowa that I'm working with. So we're not expecting to have the average herd have a 5% death loss.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
is the average in the United States. These guys are at 3%. And this one herd was always at, 3, 4, 5%. And, I'm talking to him about, things to do to get that down. And really, it's not making much headway. And then he sees that he's in dead last place. He comes up to me after the meeting, after everybody's long, and he says, "We have got to solve this calf death loss problem." It was like it's the first time he'd ever heard it. And I wanted to say, "Dude, I've been talking about this for a couple of years." But he saw the competition and it really bothered him. And we sat down and we made a plan and we solved the problem. So,
Is he first now?
I don't know that he was ever first, but he sure got back up, into the average category. And I told him that. I said, average in this group is fabulous, right?
Mm-hmm.
This don't worry about being the highest, and the biggest metric was profit per cow per year. And it was interesting because the one guy was the highest profit nearly every year. He didn't do anything the best, but he did everything better than average. He did not have one area on his beef business where he was below average. And it was just cool to see that you didn't have to be hitting home runs every time. Singles and doubles will win lots of games.
That's great. That's a really good example. I'm thinking about how I can incorporate that exercise of the columns and the rankings. Like,
yeah,
I'm going to store that away for a future workshop or something like that. That's a great idea.
It worked great. So, yeah.
Well, you were speaking earlier about relationships and how, like, if you don't know the answer, you'll call a nutritionist, and that you work with all these groups. And so it's evident that you're a big believer in relationships and like, things that go with that. So can you speak more to the importance about having a good relationship with your herd health veterinarian or with a nutritionist or with a bookkeeper, things of that nature, just the value of relationships to a beef business?
If anything, beef cow calf veterinarians they undersell their services. We are horrible marketing. I couldn't tell you how many times I've done a herd consultation visit with a veterinarian because I get called in because of a problem, and the herd health veterinarian's there and the owner is there. And we start talking about something, and the veterinarian says, "Well, I can do that for you." And the farmer looks at him and says, "I didn't know that," right? We need to explain things that we can do for our clients. And I tell veterinarians, I said, it's your job to ask the client what their goals are and how the two of you can work together to solve those issues and make those goals happen. That's not the producer's responsibility, because they don't know what you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to be the ones that's the instigator. That's not the right word, but the initiator. That's a better word.
There you go.
The initiator of these discussions. And so that's one of the things when I do veterinary meetings, I talk to veterinarians about being the initiator, right? Ask them what their goals are and see how you can help them get there, because they've done research. And if they've asked veterinarians what they think the goals are of the farm, and then they ask the farmers, the correlation is almost zero. It's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've been married for 43 years and I still can't read my wife's mind, right? Why does the veterinarian and the owner think each other can read their minds? So, I think it's imperative that the producer says to the veterinarian, I think we can do better, right? And challenge the veterinarian and let them know that you want to do better. But most of the veterinarians are not out there trying to sell you something. They're trying to help you make more profit. But I think we're also, as veterinarians, we're way too frugal. We assume that the producer doesn't want to spend any money. They want least costs on everything. They want cheap. And that's not the case. You know, I love taking things out of the vaccination protocol because I see herds using products they don't need or at the wrong time. Even when I worked for Elanco, I would say, no, you shouldn't use that vaccine. Your management takes care of that. You don't need that. And that's great to do those kind of things to help them. But the veterinarian, let's talk about something so simple as implanting suckling calves. Brandy, less than 25% of calves in the United States get a suckling implant. For heaven's sakes, the return on investment is unbelievable. An implant costs about $1.25
Mm-hmm.
to give you about 20 pounds of weaning weight. Well, if the calves are bringing 250, that's $50.
Yeah.
If I ask a farmer, would you take $1.20 to the bank? And then if you went back 120 days later and they gave you $50, would you be okay with that?
Who would do that?
Pretty sure 100% of producers would, but we're missing the boat on something so simple as that. So, those are kind of things that conversation needs to happen. And, the veterinarian needs to ask, the producer needs to ask and make things like that happen to have that relationship. Because come on, if the implant's selling for $1.10, I think the vet's making about 10 cents on it. Implants are a horrible margin. I know, from being in business.
Right.
So the vet's not sitting there pushing implants because he's getting rich on the thing. It's just an unbelievable return on investment. So there's things where you need to save money, and there's other places where you need to spend a little bit of money to make a bunch of money.
I agree. Absolutely. Everything. I mean, there's a return on investment, and everything is at least, cost benefit.
And you mentioned the nutritionist, right? I have a friend that's a veterinarian, and he says the only time a bovine should be eating rumensin is from womb to tomb. From the day they're born to the day they go to, because it makes you money every day.
I've never heard that before, and I was caught off guard.
Less than I think the last I saw was 11% of beef cows get fed rumensin during the winter. 200 milligrams of rumensin costs 2 cents per cow per day and saves 10% of your hay. Wow.
That's a no-brainer.
Bringing all your hay for free, it seems like a pretty good, return on investment. So your nutritionist needs to have those conversations with you and says, hey, you're buying a good mineral, but I really think you need one, that we can mix in with the TMR that's got rumensin in it to help. So, yeah.
That's great.
Everybody out there is trying to help you. I really think. I am not a skeptic. Well, maybe a tiny bit, but I trust people before I think they're trying to take advantage of me. And if they're trying to take advantage of me, then that's it. They'll never work for me again. I have a one strike policy on that.
Uh-huh. Rarely
does that happen. Most times when I reach out to someone, they're trying to help me. And I want that. I know what I'm good at. I'm not good at everything. So I try to stay in my spot.
Uh-huh.
And I find other people that are good at what they're good at, and I use them in their spot. And yeah, my producers are very thankful. I pulled, when I took over the integrated resource management program at Purdue, we ended up having about 30 herds on that program. And I gave them a questionnaire one time, and I said, who's the most valuable person that has been brought to your farm since we started working with you? And I don't remember the exact number, but it was something like 80% of the people said the forage specialist that you brought, that helped them extend their grazing season, reduce hay consumption. I mean, it was increase cows by 20% on the same acres, things like that. That's not my expertise.
Right.
But when I bring in those forage specialists, Kansas State did some research a number of years ago. I listened to their BCI podcast, and
that's a great one.
Oh yeah. And they alluded one time that somebody at K-State had done some research, and it was where is the most cost-effective place to spend $1 on a beef cow calf operation, and it was improve the pastures.
Yes, I agree.
Because if I can get that cow to graze X number of days longer and not feed her hay, wow, that's money in my pocket.
Yes.
I can increase my carrying capacity by 20% without having to build any more fins, buy another tractor, a feeder, etc. All those fixed costs now get, allocated across a lot more numbers, and my profit per cow goes up considerably. So yeah, I can't stress enough to get experts onto your farm or ranch that want to help you.
That's all. I was just sitting here shaking my head, agreeing with so much of that. Um,
Yeah.
I know that our nutrition, I can't take credit for this because my husband is the one who lines up the nutrition and stuff like that. But we do employ the use of rumensin. So when you said that, I thought, yes, we're doing something right. We just make sure that it's not near the.
It's low hanging fruit, right? I mean, implants and feed and rumensin are such low hanging fruits that should be used, everywhere.
Absolutely. We just make sure we keep it away from the feed room where the horse is.
Correct. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Easy enough to do that.
Yeah. And we have to we lock the gates so the horses don't get out and make it to the feed room. So
smart.
Well, I know that you have some numbers that you are very excited to share. So let's just go into that. We were talking earlier before we started recording about preconditioning. And I don't necessarily think preconditioning is controversial at all. I don't think it's controversial in the beef industry. However, there are definitely people who are on that bus and swear by it. And then I think there's people who are just maybe don't see the value in it. They've never tried it. They didn't grow up doing it, various different reasons, and maybe have never given it a thought. So I think that we could use this time for you to convince people to do preconditioning. What does that sound like for you?
Yeah, I'm just passionate about this subject. It's probably one of the things I get asked to talk about the most. I actually was able to do an 11-year study at Purdue with one of our herds on preconditioning, because at the time there was innumerable articles on the benefit of preconditioning to the feedlot owner, but the ones on the cow calf, a lot of them were simulations or really tiny studies, and it really didn't give a lot. So I had this producer that we started doing preconditioning in 1998, and he is a businessman. He kept track of every penny that he had. And I said to him, I says, hey, this would make a good research project. Let's get, a number of years of data on this, and I want to publish that. And I had an ag economist at Purdue that helped me with the paper because I needed that expertise, on there. I could do the production side, but she was awesome on all the financial numbers. But I've analyzed preconditioning cost effectiveness for 33 years.
Mm-hmm.
And 2024 is projected to be the highest price of feeder calves ever.
I wish I had I feel like for this conversation, I need to have a
ever.
Alert sound, on a radio production,
right,
to emphasize your points.
Exactly. So the producer's sitting there going, oh my gosh, I'm just going to take the money and run. If a calf's got 3 legs and 1 eye, he's bringing good money. And it could not be farther from the truth this year. In the 33 years that I've looked at data, this will be the highest profit potential for preconditioning calves we have ever seen,
mm-hmm.
ever. Because calf prices are at record high prices. Feed prices are probably going to be a tiny bit, slightly above average. But when you've got calf prices here
mm-hmm.
and feed prices here, that is a formula for success. So yeah, I'm going to look off to the side because I did some figuring.
Yeah.
So I put in October 1st, weaned calves, 550 pounds. I looked at futures price, 283. So that calf's worth $1,557. Okay. If we take that calf and own that calf for 60 days, gains 2.75 pounds a day, which is very reasonable. We've got tons of data. That's about what this herd's calves did in the 11 years of data I had. So 60 days later, 715 pounds at 275, because the price slide, the calf price goes down. But historically, from October to December, calf prices go up 3%, because the slug of calves that hit the market in October, you never want to be selling something when everybody else is selling.
Right.
My grandpa always said, always be a contrarian, right? So that calf's worth $1,966. So a difference of $409. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how much gross dollars that is different. Interestingly enough, calves that are unweaned that go right to market shrink about 7%. Preconditioned calves only shrink about 3%.
Okay.
So that on those calves, that's a difference of 17 pounds at $275. So there's another $38 that we're adding. Now, you can't guess on what the preconditioning premium, that the bonus that people are going to pay for that calf because of the health, right? Because preconditioned calves get sick at half the rate the unweaned, unvaccinated calves get, and half the death loss, approximately.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason people are paying more from them is it's like, hey, these calves are most likely not gonna get it sick. So I put together a ration. DDGs at $200 a ton, soy hulls at $150 a ton, grass hay at $150 a ton, mineral rumensin. I didn't write that one down. I think it was like $1,700 a ton, and then corn $5 a bushel. And I used the Brands Nutrition Program from Iowa State, and I put together a preconditioning ration for these calves. Cost of gain on the calves on this ration was, I've got it right here, 61 cents.
Whew.
Now that doesn't include yardage and labor, but 61 cents to put a pound on that you're getting over $2 for.
It's not much.
Nope. So
Not at all.
we're going to go back to the math. $409, right, for the weight on the calf. $38 because of the shrink. Then we're going to take away that feed cost was $100 per calf to feed them for the 60 days. I'm going to even put in a 1% death loss. That's minus $16. My research on this herd was over 1,000 calves, and he had a death loss of 0.3%.
Woof.
He lost 3 calves out of 1,000.
That is amazing.
So yeah. So that is, before you get any preconditioning bonus, you made $361 by owning that calf for 60 days.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you? Yeah.
If you get a $10 100 bonus for those calves, that's another $71. $432 return to labor and management. 80% of which was because of the weight gain.
Yeah.
We need to stop talking about the bad word preconditioning bonus, because we don't have any control over that. But I have total control over what those calves gain, because I know what the genetics are, what the health are, and I can put a ration together, or your nutritionist can put a ration together that's going to give you 2.75 pounds a day gain with no fleshy calves. This is a high fiber ration that doesn't have much starch in it at all, that works just very, very well. The other thing that I like to talk about is weaning time's not the time to give the first vaccinations, castrate, dehorn, whatever.
Right.
Those springborn calves, whenever fly season hits, that's when you ought that calf, if he wasn't castrated at birth, he needs to be done then.
Yes.
So in my world, that's about the end of May. So I'm going to process my calves, give them their first dose of modified live, castrate the bulls, implant the steers. I'm going to implant the heifers that are not keeper heifers, put a fly tag in, pour on, stuff like that. Then the day of weaning, they're going to get their second dose of modified live. I'm going to deworm them, cut the fly tag out, pour them again, get another implant into those calves. That preconditioning implant that you put in, if you have that in there for 60 days, you're looking at another 30 pounds of gain on those calves from that next implant. And 90+% of feedlot cattle get an implant. So unless you have a contract before the calves are born with somebody that wants non-hormone treated cattle, you take them to the sale barn and say they didn't have any implant, they're going to get an implant.
Right. Yeah, they're going to do it anyway. I
would tell people, I'm not pro implant. I'm pro the producer making money.
Yeah.
I did a meeting in I'm going to call it a green state. Okay. Lots of tree huggers and I said something about implanting, and I could see this producer in the audience. The veins in his neck were sticking out. His face was getting red. He was ready for a fight. And I took a breath, and he stood up and he says, "I'll have you know I sell organic beef." And I said, "Okay." I said, what are you getting for it?" He said, "Double market price." I said to him, I says, "Really? That's awesome. How many are you selling a year?" 200 head. I walked up and shook his hand. I said, "Congratulations." I says, "What I see is too many people that are trying to sell, all natural or something like that, and they're not getting any bonus for it.
That's great for him. Yeah.
I said, you're selling beef to somebody that would probably buy chicken or maybe not even buy meat. I said, you're a wonderful part of the beef industry. I mean, I thought he was going to tell me he sold 3 a year, right? So there's lots of ways to make a profit in this deal.
Yeah, that's great.
The other thing is the cow-calf producer. If I ask 100 cow-calf producers, do you want your calves to be healthy and have a successful career for the feedlot owner? All 100 are going to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's an animal welfare issue. Preconditioned calves get sick less and they die less. Those are my calves. I want them to do well.
Mm-hmm.
If that feedlot producer makes a pile of money on my calves, who's he going to call next year to buy calves?
You.
Exactly. So I'm being a little bit selfish with this by developing this high health, good genetic calf that makes good money for him. So, and the supply and the demand every year of precondition is we don't have enough supply and we've got a huge demand for them.
Mm-hmm.
So we could sell a lot more preconditioned calves. So
yeah,
please do not jerk your calves off the cow and take the money and run this fall because you think, oh my gosh, prices could fall or something like that. Sure, prices could fall. But $432 is really tough not to want to have in your back pocket.
You're going to need right then.
I hate to use the word no-brainer, but it's almost a no-brainer this year on preconditioning calves. You mentioned that I wrote a couple of articles. I've got a 10-page scientific article, and I've got a extension publication that Nicole Olnick Woodmar and I, the economist, put together. And those are on.
I know her.
Oh, do you? She's wonderful. Yeah.
She is married to a classmate of mine from when we were in college. So I've met her once. But yeah, I went to school with her husband and we were good friends. So that's great.
Yeah, she'd be a great person to have on your podcast. She's well-spoken, but she helped me on this. But both of those resources are on my website. So if the listeners want to grab those, my website is MW Beef Cattle for Midwest, mwbeefcattle.com. And if you look under educational articles, educational tools, something like that, click on it. It's right there. There's some other videos and stuff like on how to deliver a calf and some other things. So help yourself. That's why it's there.
That's great.
I'm sorry if I got too excited about.
No, I love it when people are passionate about what they're working on.
And I want people to do that. Yeah, it's just it's a no-brainer year, right? I mean, it's just incredible.
I love passionate people and when people are excited about their work they're doing. And if I was someone who sold my calves at weaning or shortly after weaning, I would absolutely be following that program. I mean, we do a lot of those things already with the vaccinating earlier in their life and then vaccinating at weaning. We do a lot of those already, but we just, as you know, we keep our calves and we're not selling them on. So
talk to your veterinarian, talk to your nutritionist, make a plan. And that's one of the things in the extension publication that came out is you need to build a team, right? You need to have a veterinarian, you need to have a nutritionist, you need to have a grazing specialist. All these people will help you in this preconditioning, question on how to do it correctly. I get so tired of hearing, oh, I preconditioned my calves 20 years ago and they brought the same price as the neighbors. Did you figure your cost of gain? No, they didn't. So you don't know the whole equation.
Was the neighbor preconditioning too? Maybe.
No. But that's I hear that story and it just doesn't get any traction with me because in our research paper, 63% of the profitability was made in the gain.
Mm-hmm.
34%, whatever the difference was, 37% was because of the preconditioning bonus. When I look at today's, it's 80%.
Oof.
Because calf prices are so high and feed prices are so reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the big deal is the weight gain, not the preconditioning bonus.
No reason not to.
Yep.
Well, I feel like, maybe I don't know the answer to this. I'm sure I don't. But you've worked in a wide variety of things. You've worked in your consulting role where you very clearly love helping people reach high levels of profitability. You've been in the academia as an instructor, private practice. You worked in industry, Elanco. Like, I don't have a lot of guests who have done all of these different pieces. And so this is really cool to talk to you. What area do you feel like you've made the most impact on the beef industry and its people? And I think I know what you're going to say, but I wanted to ask it anyway and hear it from you.
Yeah, and gosh, I hope this doesn't come across as bragging. That's not what I'm trying to say. When I have one of my former veterinary students call me and tell me some of the cool things they're doing, stuff that I never thought of or taught them, and they're just keep achieving, oh my gosh, I'm like a proud papa on the deal. So that is so rewarding, and I keep pretty close contact with a lot of my former students, and it's so fun. And the second area would be after we've done, multiple herd consults for a beef herd, and they've had nagging little problems. And I go there the next year and say, so how's the health of the herd? And the husband looks at the wife and goes, it's good. And one of them goes, well, didn't we have a case of pink eye last year? No, that was 2 years ago. Oh yeah, no health issues, no issues. Everything's fine tuning at this point, right? Because we solved all those little problems. And it wasn't me. I called in the nutritionist. I called in the grazing expert. I called in somebody else. I might have called somebody smarter than me in veterinary medicine, which there's thousands of those people out there. And, a herd we worked with in the eastern part of the United States, 800 cows, fall calving. Every year for 3 years in a row, they treated every single calf for nursing calf pneumonia around Christmas time.
Oh my.
100% of the calves out of 800 calves.
Wow.
And I could tell this was too complex for me to figure out. So I got a hold of Amelia Willems, who's the smartest veterinarian I've ever met in my life, and respiratory guru, got a nutritionist, and we had a conference call with the owner. I sent everybody all the stuff, and we put a plan together for the herd the next year. And everybody had really good ideas. There wasn't one glaring problem, Brandy. There was little problems here and there. And we said, if we can fix most of these little problems, we think the problem might go away.
Yeah.
So I talked to the veterinarian after we put the plan in place, called him after Christmas. I called him before Christmas. I said, how's it going? He says, treated one calf so far.
Wow.
I said, great. I called him between Christmas and New Year's, and I said, so usually the disasters happen by now, right? And he goes, still just the one.
That's amazing.
I called him in like early February. I said, so how was it? He goes, just treated one calf. We went from treating 800 calves for pneumonia to one.
That is outstanding.
He never has nursing calf pneumonia anymore.
Wow.
It wasn't one thing. It was lots of little things. And because we got that team together that said, we're going to attack this from the nutrition side, from the animal husbandry side, from the veterinary side. We're going to chink away at this and see if we can't. How rewarding is that, right? I mean, it's just, it makes you feel like $1 million.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a wonderful success story. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, so if you could give beef producers one piece of advice pertaining to overall herd health, what would that be?
Yeah, they should have a once a year sit down with their herd health veterinarian to go over their vaccination protocol and anything else that's going on to absolutely minimize disease. I've got tons of herds I've worked with for years and years and years that have never had a calf with scours.
That's impressive.
Nursing calf scours should be a very unusual event.
Mm-hmm.
We know how to prevent it. So, to get that solved, that nursing calf respiratory disease, that one was a tougher one. I sure had no quote, and I never guarantee anything, but I thought that it would take a lot longer to get from 800 down to almost 0. I really thought it would take more years of doing things, but it was all because the owner did everything that we suggested. I mean, to the nth degree.
They were tired of treating calves for sure.
Exactly. And a lot of times I don't see that commitment. I see them do the 3 easiest things, and the 3 hardest ones are like, we'll see if this works. But just having a plan. You should not have sickness. It just should not happen in a well-managed beef herd. And if you're having sickness, you should challenge your veterinarian and sit down and say, I'm tired of this. How are we going to solve this? And if you're not having any disease issues, I love to look at the vaccination protocol and see if they're over vaccinating.
Mm-hmm.
If they're given twice a year cow vaccinations for repro, probably don't need that. Once a year is probably fine. Does every cow need dewormed every year? On my own herd, I've got cows that I haven't dewormed for 3 years. If I've got a 6-year-old cow that's in body condition score 5.5 at preg check time, she's bred AI, and she's bred AI every year, for the last few years, right on schedule. if she's got parasites in her, I want those on my pasture because they're pretty weak. They're not doing much damage. But, our young cows, I deworm all mine under 4. And I never have cows in under body condition score 4, but if I did, they would get dewormed also. But gosh, dewormers are expensive. That's probably the most expensive pharmaceutical you're using on the cow. So if you've got 100 cows and you can go from, treating 100 of them to 50 of them, you got to have a plan for this. Don't just willy-nilly do this. Sit down with your veterinarian and make sure this is the right thing to do. I'm not your herd health veterinarian. I give advice for herds I work with. That's it. When somebody calls me for specific advice, I go, I don't know, right? I don't know your environment. I've never been on your farm. You need to talk to your veterinarian.
Yeah.
But cutting things out of the vaccination and treatment protocol to me, is fun. And I tell them, and especially if the wife's standing right there, let's say we just saved $2,500 on dewormer. I says, hey, I'll bet Susan's been wanting to go on a little vacation for a while. I think $2,500, that'd be a nice little vacation.
That'll cover it.
And when I say it right in front of her, I mean, he's the farmer, the guy is killing me. He's like, Mark, for God's sakes. But,
Susan's your new best friend.
Exactly. And if they do go on a vacation and I hear about it, it's pretty rewarding.
That's great.
Yeah.
You get a postcard, baby.
You bet. Yep. That's right.
That is all the questions I have of our planned, topic specific questions. I could talk to you for another 45 minutes.
Yeah, I know I talk too much.
No, you don't talk too much. I have loved it. I have absolutely loved it.
Great.
It's time for our famous 3.
We've come to the part of the episode where I ask the same questions of all of our guests. So the first one of these is, what is your favorite beef or cattle related book or resource? It doesn't have to be a book. It could be a person or a website or something like that.
Yeah, it is. It's not a book because by the time a book's published, it's a little bit out of date. So I'm a big fan of looking things up on Google Scholar, scholar.google.com. And if I've got a question on, what's the best synchronization program for cows, beef cows, then I do some research because that's the kind of questions I get from my producers. They hear about the 7-in-7 sync. Is that the best one? And yep, probably is for cows. I need to do some research on heifers because I know they've been doing a little bit on heifers. I've got a herd that wants to know that on heifers. So yeah, it's Google Scholar, because then you get scientific articles instead of Joe's blog from, a state where there's 50,000 cows and Joe owns 3 cows and he's giving advice, right? I'm not interested in what Joe has to say. I want to know what, Rick Funston from University of Nebraska.
Yes.
And if Funston writes it, I read it. If I got a text message that says, Rick Funston just wrote a new telephone book, I just read it because I might know. The guy's a genius.
Oh, I love it. There's
different people like him that if they're writing things, Basarab up in Canada, a genius on genetics. And, so yeah, I've got my pet people that I read all their stuff.
That's great. I love that. I hope Dr. Funston is listening right now.
I hope so.
I'm going to send him this episode.
I was totally off the cuff. I wasn't expecting to do that.
That was great. I loved it. This is great. Okay, so the next one is, what is a book not related to the beef industry that you are either currently reading or is one of your favorites?
Yeah, I'm going to give you 2. One of my favorites is the timeless classic, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Okay.
Everybody should read that 4 or 5 times during their lifetime. I'm probably on it for the 3rd or 4th time right now, because even though we're dealing with animals, this is a people business. And I have veterinarians that have tried to do consulting and it has not worked for them. And it didn't work for me, Brandy, the first 5 years I tried it. Really, I was an absolute failure because I came out of school being taught to tell the farmer what to do. And I realized pretty quickly, no one likes being told what to do. And when I went to a talk by Dee Griffin, and Dee's had a phenomenal career in veterinary medicine, absolutely one of the smartest, sharpest minds in the entire beef industry, veterinary industry. One of his talks talked about consulting, and his, I don't know if he came out and said it or what, but But I left there going, oh my God, I need to stop telling people what to do and ask them what their goals are.
Yeah.
And Dale Carnegie's book of, putting people first and how to understand people and read them, how that you can help them. I always I told my vet students, I said, my goal as a consultant is to get inside my client's head and figure out how to help them, because people learn differently, they react to things differently, and if I use the same canned speech on everybody, it's not going to work. And Carnegie's book really talks about that. My wife got me Poor Charlie's Almanac for my birthday, and it's a book about Charlie Munger, who just passed away, who was Warren Buffett's partner in Berkshire Hathaway.
Okay.
And it's an excellent read, and it has lots of implications that a beef producer would enjoy. I have to use my phone dictionary every once in a while because Charlie's vocabulary is a little broader than Mark Hilton's, so some of the words I have to look up. But it's a really good read, and I've really enjoyed that a lot. I like to read things outside of the beef business once in a while. I mean, for Christmas I did get a beef nutrition book that's like 500 pages long, and it's pretty exciting. My whole family just died laughing when they saw that was my what my wife got me for Christmas, because that's what I asked for. They're like, seriously? I go, oh yeah, this is awesome. It's great reading. So
I have gotten my husband a very thick book on swine nutrition. So I'm sure you do know him. So
yes,
you guys could trade.
We could geek out together.
You could geek out about nutrition. I don't use geek as an insult because I geek out about my own specific things as well. I did write down the Dale Carnegie book. I've heard that book mentioned several times, not necessarily on this podcast, but I've heard lots of people say it. So
it was written like 80 or 90 years ago, and it's still, I mean, some of the examples are not current, but come on, you can get the main picture.
So I'm going to order that on Amazon after we get off this episode.
You'll get it for $5, right?
Okay, and so the last one is when you think of someone that you look up to, what is a trait they possess that you admire or has enabled them to be successful?
It's easy. It's my grandpa. My maternal grandfather was absolutely a role model to me. Grandpa Bergman graduated from 8th grade, and his dad owned a butcher shop and said, you don't need any more schooling to be a butcher. I can teach you to do that. And absolutely was one of the smartest people I've ever met. And everyone loved my grandpa because he was so interested in them. One of his favorite sayings was, it's better to be interested than interesting. And I just saw how he earned the trust of people around him. And I subconsciously said to myself, I'm sure as a young boy, I want to be like Grandpa. I want to be like that. And so I saw how he did that, and how he never took advantage of anyone, how he always had their best interest at heart. And so yeah, that's who I tried to be like. I mean, at his funeral, it was absolutely incredible, the people that got up and talked. And I was actually in Toastmasters when I was in Iowa, and I got to go to a contest, and I did Grandpa's memorable quotes for my talk, and I was runner up in the district contest, and people were laughing and crying during the talk. And you got a good talk if somebody's laughing and somebody's crying.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
But his funeral was just amazing, the people that he touched. And so yeah, he's one of my role models. He was one of my heroes.
He sounded like a really amazing person.
Wonderful guy.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. That's a nice memory and thought to have here on the podcast. Sadly, that is all the time today on our audience that we have on this episode. Thank you so much, Dr. Hilton, for being here. I have truly so much enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that our paths cross, which is pretty likely considering we raised the same breed of cattle.
Sounds good.
Go Team Gelby. I will, but again, thank you so much for being here on the show with us. I did write down in the show notes, mwbeefcattle.com, if people want to find out more about your work, the papers that you've written. Are there any other places where you'd like to send people, or just focus on that website?
No, that sounds good. I talk a little bit about my consulting business, but I sure didn't come on here to, to sell that. But if, people are interested, I'd be glad to, at least listen to them. And, maybe there's somebody closer to them that would be even better. So, yeah.
Right. And just for our audience, if you missed that at the beginning of the show, Dr. Hilton's business is named Midwest Beef Cattle Consultants. And you can visit that website, and it is mwbeefcattle.com. And I put all that in the show notes for all of you. So again, thank you so much for being on here with us. Audience, we hope that you have enjoyed the show and that you will join us again next week on the Beef Podcast.